Right. Hey, welcome everybody. Great to have you here. We got a little sunshine this morning. Not supposed to happen, so pretty cool. I don't know how long it'll last, so if you sneak back out during our talk, which isn't going to be all that great, we'd understand. So we'd absolutely understand. But welcome. Glad you made it. Thanks for the travel, the complexity of getting here. Really, really believing that God is going to do some cool stuff in this room for the next day and a half.
Yeah, and Wes and I have been talking about this for quite some time to bring these two districts together, and I know we're both excited, we're both ecstatic about it. However, we do need to address, maybe for some, the elephant in the room. I got a text yesterday. I don't think I showed you, but I got a text yesterday from someone going, "I know what you and Wes are up to. You're going to merge these two districts." Let me just tell you, I don't like Wes that much. And he doesn't like, no. We just want to put that rumor to rest and help us put it to rest. The answer is absolutely not. We do love each other. We like each other. We've got two healthy districts. Why would we screw that up? So we are here to come together in the West, because sometimes in a district we can even get a little isolated from the rest of our Wesleyan family. And we thought it would be great to bring some of us together to get to know each other, to connect, to learn from one another, because there is something unique about the West and doing ministry in the West that I think we can encourage one another, challenge one another, and learn from one another.
100%. And there's so much collaboration already between our church plants and in other ways. And so we just hope this ramps that up. And we hope together we're better than apart in a lot of ways, right? So we're going to start our morning off with some best practices that Mike and I would love for you to be pondering over the next day and a half. They're not specifically earth-shattering, but we have come to believe these are things that actually really matter and might be of benefit for you to be having some conversation about over the next day and a half. So I asked Mike, what's a practice that you're seeing that has the biggest impact, simple or complex, whatever it might be, but what's a practice you're seeing that's had the biggest impact in your last year or so on the Pacific Southwest?
This one is amazingly simple. I almost hesitate to even talk about it, because we're going to talk about one in a few minutes that is, I think, ministry altering and sustainability altering that Wes is going to unpack. But this one, even though it's simple, it matters in a huge way. So a little bit of history in our learning in our district. When I stepped into this role just about 3 years ago now, the Pacific Southwest was in the red when it came to reaching more lost people year after year after year. Other than a couple of churches that were carrying the rest of the church. It looked like we were increasing, but it was a couple of churches that were carrying the rest of the district. A majority of the district, we were reaching fewer lost people year after year after year. From that 1 year to the next year, we went from in the negative percentage to in the positive percentage, in double digits. And then if we remove the couple of churches that were actually carrying the rest of the district, that went even higher. We saw a significant change in the number of people who were meeting Jesus in 1 year. And then in year 2, which ended last July, we saw another 30% jump on top of that. So it was just a significant difference. And we go back and we go, what made the difference? And we can talk about a number of things, but there was one thing. One thing, we just began to talk about giving regular invitations for people to meet Jesus. Go figure. Just regular invitations in your weekend services, in your youth group, in your children's ministry, in small groups. And the question is, are there regular, clear moments where people have a moment to make a decision for Jesus? And again, it's one of those things that I know sounds simple, but as we began to dig into it and actually ask, when was the last time you gave an invitation? There is, and it's not just unique to our district, it's the capital C church. it's not happening as frequently as it needs to happen. And that one thing, I think, significantly turned the entire tide of our district.
Yeah, Daniel Pink talks about shots on goal as one of the ways to measure sort of life effectiveness. And I know I've observed the same thing. So many of our churches, when they started creatively, we talk about once a month or so, when they started creatively doing this, shots on goal, it's amazing what started to happen in their local churches. I think it's a really big deal. Simple, but really big deal. So specifically, what are some best practices you've used around sort of teaching it? And
we've got a little bit of a list,
practice.
and we'll put them up here, and we'll kind of unpack them. You know, there was a pastor in our district who I've loved and known and respected for years. When I asked him, when was the last time you gave an invitation? It shocked me. He had to think about it for a moment. And this guy, I mean, he loves Jesus. He loves lost people. But we can sometimes lose the intentionality here. And then he said, but, you know, we aren't that big. So I tend to do it when new people come because I know everybody in the room knows Jesus. Yeah. And I had to challenge him with the story of, in one of the churches that we pastored, it's actually in North Dakota, we gave an invitation, and a guy who'd been part of the church, not just that church, but other churches for 40 years, actually served on the board, came to the altar, and I'm like, what in the world is happening? He said, I just realized I've never surrendered my life to Jesus. I was just living it. Yeah. Yeah. And we all thought we knew. You don't know people's stories. So just a few practices on this. We'll go through it real quickly. And this depends on your personality. Track it or plan it. You don't have to do both, but track it or plan it. Do you track how many invitations you give in a year? I actually think, not that we need to complicate our annual statistical report, because that is like the most complicated, and I'm going to get myself in trouble there. But not that we get rid of tracking the number of salvations, but I wonder if an even more important indicator, because that's a lagging indicator.
Totally agree, Mike. This evening, we're introducing a best practices survey, and we're going to be asking how many times this year and recommending about once a month, because I think it is crucial.
Yeah, and if you don't want to track it, then plan it. Put it on your calendar. If you're a planner, and I know some, because we've got some of you who are here. You're like, I just give an invitation when the Spirit prompts. Okay, great. Track how often the Spirit prompts. Because what I've discovered is you aren't listening to him as much as you think you should be. My name is Mike. I'm your friend. But I think we need to make sure we track it or plan it. And one of the things that we hear on this is, but what if it doesn't fit the message? I have yet to hear a message where you can't fit the plan of salvation in it. We had one of our pastors.
If you can't, you might think about a different message.
Yes. One of our pastors, he's not with us this week, but I asked permission to share. He was preaching on the Nephilim. Anybody preached on the Nephilim? Any of you? You know, preaching on the Nephilim. And he gave an invitation, and 6 people said yes to Jesus. You know, I don't care what you preach on. You can give an invitation. Second thing is, and this is just simple, just make it clear. We've all sat under invitations. It's like, I'm going to give an invitation now. Now, if you want to make a decision for Jesus, or if you're mad at your mother-in-law, or if you're just feeling bad today, or, you know, and by the end, it's like, I don't know what I'm deciding. Make it clear what you're asking people to decide. Give a way for people to respond that doesn't feel impossible, because you want to be able to follow up with them. But think about, particularly if you're an extrovert, ask an introvert. You know, if you say, if you made a decision for Jesus today, we want you to stand up, shout, wave a flag, and run around the room. You know, introverts aren't going to do that. We want you to go meet somebody in person at the welcome tent. I'm an introvert, and I'm a pastor, and I'm not sure, I love Jesus. I'm not sure I'm going to go do that the first time I'm there. But give people a way to respond. And then, by the way, don't apologize for low or lack of response. where we give an invitation, it's kind of like, well, nobody responded. We almost apologize. One of our pastors, he's in Sacramento. I think they're here today. I'm going to out him a little bit. But he kind of took on the challenge when we made the challenge. And I think, I'm reading in between the lines. He can challenge me later. It was a little bit to prove me wrong. And he said, we're going to give an invitation every single week. And he said, I don't think it's going to work. And he said, sometimes it was awkward. Sometimes we all looked around the room and you could tell people were thinking, you're going to get saved this week? I got saved last week. You know, it's kind of that kind of thing. But he said, even though it was awkward and whatever, what they did see was they saw more people come to know Jesus that year. So don't apologize. And then finally on this, always work on the skill of invitation. There are some who are gifted evangelists, but I would guess most of us in the room are not a gifted evangelist. And yet Paul said to Timothy, do the work of an evangelist. And this is a skill. Culture is constantly changing. And how we invite people, how we make it clear, how we explain it, I think we need to constantly update and work on and learn from others. So we move on to, do you have anything else to say that? Move on to the second topic?
You reminded me, before we do, we had a pastor retire a few months ago. And about 2 years before he retired, he and I had a conversation about the last time he had offered the plan of salvation in a clear, creative, intentional way. And it had been a few years. And he was ashamed of that. And he said, I don't think there's anybody in our small church that will respond, but this Easter, I'm going to do that, Wes. I'm going to do that. He did that, and 9 people came to Christ that Easter, some of which were like the person you talked about, right? Were the board member or the whatever, right?
He'd known him for years.
Yeah. 9 people accepted Christ, and over the last 9 months before he retired, more people came to Christ under his ministry than like 7 years previous. And it's just this one simple change. And it forces you, when you know you're going to have to do this, to do it in a clear, creative way, right? You're going to be up there presenting the gospel message, right? So powerful. Yeah, let's move to what's next. But I'm taken by that.
And again, it seems so simple, but let me encourage you, just think about it and find ways to celebrate it along the way. We could talk about that all day long. We want to move on to another topic, and this is a question. The Northwest District, and those of you part of the Northwest District, you've been working on these best practices lately, and we're beginning to talk about those in the Pacific Southwest. So you, earlier this year, if I remember right,
District Conference,
yep. Talked about best practices and kind of rhythms for sustainability. Mm-hmm. And I'd love for the Pacific Southwest, but I think we all need to hear that for you to unpack that for us.
Well, we did a lot of study related to the pastors that were thriving over a long period of time. What were some practices in their life? And we listed several practices, but we didn't really have a chance at district conference to go into any one specifically. And the one that I get the most questions about are what about personal rhythms for sustainability? Like, how do I go through the week, through the month, through the year, that I can both be effective and real sustainable? And so I'll just share that list. You can ask me some questions on that list, but in the few minutes that we have, I want to present now. For all of us, in the room like this, there's all kinds of different roles and church sizes and structures with how our jobs are done, and it's hard. But these seem to be principles that guide, right? Principles that guide, and then you got to apply it to your specific situation. But the first is take a day a week off, right?
That was almost as complicated as give an invitation.
Give an invitation. Yeah. I wonder where I got that one from, right?
Yeah,
but
that's original.
You know what? It's actually, for some in the room, it's going to be not too hard, right? They're in a situation where they can clearly define a day off. They can take it off. It's protected. But for many in the room, it's not that simple, right? A day off in ministry can be a really hard thing. I think one of the things that tends to work is try to think of a day and a half with some flex time in the middle. When I give counsel, particularly with lead pastors, and we're trying to talk about how in the world you do that, think about a day and a half, and then you've got some flex time in the middle for when that happens or when that call comes or when you have to, schedule that wedding or whatever it is. And that seems to really get, 24 of the 36. And then the flex time, and then really you got to have your sermon done by midweek and have preached it to somebody.
Now you're meddling.
Yeah, I know. But if you really want a real day off, and most of us, it's towards the end of the week, some it's on Mondays, but for those of us who really want a day off, you've got to have done that by the middle of the week and have written it or said it to somebody and feel like it's done, and you don't have to pick that back up again. So those are just two things in the day off that make such a difference.
It's interesting. If you ask Kylie, I made a shift actually much later than I would have liked to when I was in the local church, to writing sermons ahead of time and then making sure it's ready to go by like Monday, Tuesday. Yeah. And she will tell you, you can ask her, she liked me better when that happened. Yeah. I just was a better person when I didn't have that pressure on, which is so sad in so many ways. But it changes so much and gives you margin.
It makes a big difference, and it doesn't work without that. And then I would say this one last thing about a day off. Too many use the day off as like a catch up with family. So you're running. You got behind, you piled up some stuff and some time, and it's catch up with family. And really, it's not a day where you are recreated. It's a day where you check that box and caught up. Don't get behind with family, right? Make it so that you can schedule some great family time for sure, and some comrade time and some recreation time. Doing the day off is a big deal. Next one. Typical rhythm would be 3 days a month. Think about 3 days a month. One of those three is a day with God, and two of those days are just planning days. If you read, 4 Disciplines of Execution by Covey, talks about the whirlwind, right? If you can take 2 days, 3 days a month, and not have any of the whirlwind, one with God, and then 2 days that's just strategic thinking, planning, no whirlwind time. You maybe are receiving some coaching. We talk about coaching all the time. That's a day to bring in a coach and just do some of that. Boy, that makes a difference. So 3 days a month for that. We recommend 2 retreats a year, one for personal learning, one for a marriage time. These don't have to be long. These can be a couple days. But at least once a year, you've got to go away to something that you're coached and you're learning. Maybe it's a conference. Maybe it's a one-on-one, whatever. A learning time away, a marriage time away, absolutely crucial. And then I would say you should preach, if you're a lead pastor, between 38 and 45 times a year. And this will hit some folks.
That's going to stretch.
Yeah. I've really come to believe if you go over 45, you and your congregation are in trouble.
Let me press into that a little bit, because especially I would guess for most people in the room, they say, yeah, that's easier for those that have a teaching team.
For sure.
But it's just me. Mm-hmm. And I've been there. Mm-hmm. It's just me. How would you respond to that?
I would simply say you should have a teaching team, and they don't have to be paid staff. I think some of the best pastors that do this the best in some of our smaller environments, they will gather at the beginning of the year or whenever they do this. They'll pick 4 or 5 people, and they'll say, okay, you're on once this year. You're a doctor. We want to talk about how the Bible interacts with our health in September. Can you be working on that? Let's meet for coffee every now and then. And some of the best teachings I have heard are lay people who brought their expertise into the connection with the Bible. And so I'll be honest, when somebody says, I don't have a teaching team or I can't find guest speakers, I don't think that's an excuse at all.
And if you give them 3 to 6 months, I mean, you can prepare a sermon. You can prepare a great time. And if you're coaching them.
You're coaching them through it. And then it forces you to do development, right, which you should be doing anyway. But I've sat through some really bad guest speaker experiences, right? And I've said, boy, I know there's a person in their congregation who I'd way rather have heard from, right? Way rather have heard from.
Just don't start naming names.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely, absolutely. So you can tell when somebody's gone over that 45 mark and you listen to them because they've gone, they've probably gone 8 or 9 weeks, 10 weeks in a row. Yeah.
I know for me, I don't know about for you, but if I preach more than 4 to 6 weeks in a row, the quality
goes down.
My energy, my excitement, some of the staff
and
who
people's
you were on
excitement
the church
to hear you goes down.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Like, I've heard this guy now for a while.
Can we have someone else? Please.
Yeah.
Please.
Anybody.
Anybody. But I think it's necessary just for sustainability.
Yeah. Then I would say the fifth one that we talk about is try every year to take most of a month off. Pick a month. Now, in many of our cases, it's not possible to take the whole month just straight off, like a mini sabbatical type of thing. But what you can do is you can engineer some learning time with that. You can engineer a little flex time where you check in on some things, some study time. But for the most part, pick a month and let go of the whirlwind as much as you can.
But I have a board that says you don't need that much time off. What do you do?
Right. So I'd really love to have a conversation personally with that board. That'd be the first step. Like, I'd love to sit with them and just say, hey, I guarantee you your pastor will be better, and I'll guarantee you she or he will stay longer, and you'll want them to stay longer.
And you'll like them more.
Yeah, you'll like them more.
Yeah. Huabsolutely.
It's just crucial to have that. Many of our pastors do it June or July. Yeah. Some of us are hunters, and we pick a different time of the year or whatever. But I just think it's absolutely crucial.
That's good, Wes.
And then finally, sabbatical every 7 years, I think is pretty key. Now, the length of how long that is, of course, if you go to many of our best sort of pastoral counselors, they'll suggest a long sabbatical, and the longer the better. But in many of our settings, you kind of get what you get or what you can. Start with something every 7 years, and I think that makes a tremendous difference.
One thought on it, because I've done that twice. One long, one short. And the length, for me, is far less important than what I do in it. It's not about rest. It's about refilling. Those are two different things. You need rest, but you've got to do things and engage in things that actually refill your soul. I would say the same thing about a day a week. It's not just rest. There's got to be something refilling, whatever that works. So pay attention to that.
We don't have time to go deeply into all the sabbatical practices, but a sabbatical, at the heart of it, is not about rest. And there's a spiritual burden we carry that has to be set aside for a period of time. And God does some things in us. It's much more of a spiritual time than it is just a vacation time. But that's for another practice time.
It's good. So part of our goal during this time, just kind of launch this out. Yeah, we know you're going to get far better teaching the rest of the time. But there's just some of these things that we've been processing, we've been observing, best practices. This last one of the three, I'm probably the most excited about. Because those of you in the Northwest, you know this. Your DS is a brilliant thinker on these kinds of things, and he's been processing this. When he first unpacked this, I had to think about it for a while, because there is a principle that he's going to unpack here for us that probably most of us in this room have never heard. And if you begin to engage in it, it will make I think, a huge difference, and we'll talk about that. Then we're going to end this time, at the end of this, with a time of communion. I think that's a great way for us to start out a retreat together. So I've wrestled with even how to set this up. There's a principle, so I wrote this down because I want to get this right. There's this key overlooked practice that almost sounds counterintuitive, because to me, that's why I had to unpack it, process it. It sounds counterintuitive, it's easy for me to say, until you understand that it will create seasons of energy and replenishment and boosts. I've been working on that. But before we get there, I think we need to understand, you need to set this up, where this comes from. And you've got kind of a couple of graphs that explain how our energy works when we first step in. So unpack this for us, and then we'll dive in.
So let's put we're going to put an energy graph up. And this won't be a surprise to anybody, but this would be the typical, if you can see it, this would be sort of when you start any new job, doesn't have to be at a church, right? Any new job, your energy for a while increases, right? You got new people you're working with, a new role, a new vision, a new church. You've also got like unhealthy fear. You want to please new people. You got all that stuff going. However much of that is in you, right? You've got all that in you, all that going, and your energy starts kind of high, and then it actually accelerates for a period of time. But this is just the typical journey for every leader, but it starts to tail off, right? Typically for most of our research has to do with lead pastors, so this would be their kind of typical graph. If everything else is equal, typically in about 3 years, that starts to tail off. Although you can see at year 5, see, it's still decently high. Like a lot of people are like saying, wow, you're not, excited and energized or whatever, but it tails off, right? This would be a typical now. Lots can change this. Our personal habits, our personal disciplines, all kind of stuff. You can extend this and all the rest, and you're probably thinking to yourself, that's not me, I'm the exception, right? Me too. Yeah, I'm totally the exception. So this doesn't apply at all to me or you, but probably some other people. This would be the typical person, right? This is the typical way it goes. Now, let's put the second graph up. This is competence, right? This is competence. So competence, when you take a new role, starts pretty low. You obviously have some competence for the role. You wouldn't have gotten the job, but it starts kind of low and it grows. You learn, you figure some stuff out, and it just keeps going up. And typically at around 10 years, it's just had a steady climb. Now, what I'd like to do is put those two graphs together into one. I'd like to look, and that's why we would say, those of us who work with all kinds of leaders in any new managerial role or leader role, we would typically say that a leader's most effective point is that if everything else is the same, it is at about the 5-year point. Like that's where your competence has met your energy, and that's where you're really rolling, your flywheel stuff, all that stuff we talk about is really going. Of course, this all depends on habits and other kinds of things. And, of course, we're all exceptional here, right? So we're the exception to this. But this would be kind of the normal deal. So how do you deal with that? Because most of us don't want to move every 3 years, right? That's not the idea. It's not the point of this. That would be one way to solve this problem. Right, is just every 2 or 3 years, we all just change jobs. There's been whole denominations that operated that way, and there was effectiveness there because we all went to new places with new energy, new fears, and we dug in, we got going. But that's not the best way, right? That's absolutely not the best way. And so I'd like, you talked about this way, how can you create seasons of continuous energy? That would be the thing to think about in the practices. One of the things I'd like to do first, though, is there's a few lead indicators.
I was going to say, let's back up. I want to talk about that.
Because when we come to visit you or the church, there's some things we observe, and we can tell kind of where that energy is. There's like some lead indicators. For instance, if your meetings are boring, you've peaked. That's just one indication.
Some of you going, man, I'm 3 months in. we're in trouble.
And we peaked. Like if your staff meetings or your board meetings or your volunteer meetings, like if they're not energized or whatever, that's one of the lead indicators that we tend to see. And sometimes it's mostly just obvious to people outside.
Yeah.
Right? Non-missional conflict, if you're starting to see like conflict around the best way to achieve the mission, oh, that's good stuff, right? That's where you've got energy. It might not be fun. It might depend on how you
need therapy if you think that's fun. I'm just saying, but
right. It's great. Missional conflict is great.
Yeah, you're right.
Non-missional conflict, that shows us where you're at, right? Because now you're fighting about Charlie Kirk and you've lost focus on whatever, which we'll talk about tonight. But non-missional conflict, right? That's the stuff. So.
I'm going to touch on this one because this one was an indicator for me. Kind of a low-grade depression or lack of interest, where it's not that you don't care, but it's harder to care. And I think I've seen that increase in the last 6 years.
For sure.
Because we're exposed to so much all of the time. And you just have to kind of stick a temperature and check
Low-grade apathy is just one of those indicators. And again, none of these are like quit now. That we all go through seasons, right? But how do you create those? That's certainly one of those indicators. I think lack of gospel invites, what you just talked about. That is an absolute key indicator in terms of energy and right. You will see if without coaching, without the norm, in that initial 3-year period, a pastor will tend to offer the plan of salvation in a creative, intentional way significantly more than they will at year 7. Significantly more, typically.
And here's what I would add. We've got more on this list. Add to this. You know, this is not a condemning list of, you know, I'm an awful person. I'm in an awful place. This is the lights on the dashboard. Yep. Now, if you've had the light on the dashboard for a year and a half, let's have a conversation. Yep. But it just says, pay attention. Something needs to be addressed.
You're always going to have those lights going off, right? Absolutely. I would say as well, one of the key indicators, lead indicators, is if lack of new team members. So a volunteer leader if you look at your volunteer leaders and they've kind of been the same for a long time, your board, your staff, if there's just a flow of new team members transitioning in, you can just know that your energy and the energy of the organization is this way. But if there's just been a lack of new,
so don't go back and fire all your team members just because you need to. But yeah.
But honestly, fire a couple maybe because that maybe will help you have to recruit a couple to get that flywheel started, right? So I sure.
I'm just picturing the meme on that. Yep. Wes says fire a couple. All right. Look. This one for me is another indicator. If I find myself looking for escape opportunities, you know, suddenly, man, the lottery is looking really good. Yeah. Can Wesleyans, can we say that? You know, it's like all the church planners are like, sign me up for that. But,
for sure.
Or just, am I binge watching something more, just trying to get my endorphins up? Am I on church staffing? Are there any other jobs out there? You know, am I just looking for escape or am I looking for change? Those are two different things.
Yeah. And we all have these ways we escape, right? But you know what? You can actually track certain Netflix view to apathy. And you can track it on this graph for all of us. Yeah. It's very, very interesting. That'll get too personal if we get down into that.
Because, I'm not going to admit that one.
But it's pretty amazing. And you know, Mike, I think, like, let me just say this real quick. Like, you're an example of this, right? How long have you been the DS at what's your district called? PSW, right? I'm sorry, I just forgot for a second.
You guys are valued. You're cared for.
You're loved. We love you. It's all good. What? You've been there for 2 or 3 years.
Just about 3 years.
3 years. Honestly, I think it's one of the best runs I've ever seen a DS have in that period of time. And it just fits perfectly. Now, of course, you're the exception, so your chart was just like that. But you know what I mean? I just watched that happen in your life. And you came in with a sense of holy cow, God's going to need to help me, and you're learning, and you're going for it, but you're dissatisfied about some stuff, right? And you're, boom. I mean, you're the example of that.
Thank you, Zach. So let's transition to the how-to.
Yeah.
So if the energy after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, is going to begin going this way, if our competency is going up, one of the, I think, key principles is knowing when and how to make a change, right? I'll let you unpack that a little bit more. A friend of mine, he actually spoke for our retreat, I think 2 years ago. Now, was it 2 years ago, Peter? 3 years ago? 2023, whenever that was. Do the math. Math is hard sometimes. But he's this amazing Christian counselor, and he talks about the domino effect in counseling. And the same is true in leadership. Sometimes, you know, we look at all 50 things that need to change. Sometimes all you need to do is tip the first domino, and it will begin to affect other things. And I think that's true with this principle that just, unpack the change thing a little bit more.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about it. Like, you don't have, obviously we're not recommending for almost everybody, a complete move, a complete change, right? But there is a domino effect.
Some.
Yeah, for some, sure. But there is a domino effect. When you make one change, you kind of unlock something. And even if the change doesn't end up being the perfect decision, the perfect strategic decision for the church or whatever, we always want this golden, man, if I make this tweak and this will take it.
There's no silver bullets.
No, and just the idea, it recreates in you that freshness and that energy, and it's super crucial. Lots of things are your close walk with God, your rhythms of life, all these things matter, but it's hard to substitute just some change in your life that can do it. So new conversations with new people can unlock a whole bunch of stuff. It doesn't have to be you call a board meeting and you start having only church on Tuesday nights. It doesn't have to be something like that. It can just be new conversation with new people, so a new system. Many of you do, this is a very simple thing, seems like small, I thought insignificant. Some of you do a word of the year. Yeah. And I first heard about the word of the year, and I went, well, okay, if that kind of gets everybody going. It does kind of get everybody going. As it turns out, first of all, it gets the teaching team focused. Then it seems to get people excited about the top. Just that seems to make a pretty big difference. Write a new job description for yourself.
Okay, you need to explain that one a little bit more. Yeah.
So I think you should every 2 or 3 years sit down and say, am I doing the things I should be doing? Am I doing the things I'm best equipped to do? Am I doing the things that have the biggest impact? All that. And write a new job description and recruit some people to fill in those gaps. So that change alone I've seen just set a whole new thing. Obviously, a new ministry, a new initiative, a new worshiping in a different location. We have a church that moved from just one location to the high school for a while, and it just set off some cool things, Just those kind of things seem to. I'm in a group, man. I'm in a group where it's like a text group where we regularly. It's a group of pastors who are experimenting with a Wednesday night service, and they're out of space or whatever the reasons, and we don't know if it's a good idea. A jury is completely out. There's reasons they're doing it. They're good reasons, but we have no idea. But I bring it up because I'm with them, and I see how energized they are by it. And their teams are creatively thinking about it. And they've had to recruit some new teams. And they've had to go through and they're learning. And we may learn it was a bad idea, right? But it's not what it was about. And it's created that season of energy for them. And so there's so many things you can do.
Sometimes we need to change even though it will fail.
Yeah.
Just to give energy.
Failure is not an enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, not at all. Right.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a big one. For me, sometimes it's a new resource.
Yep.
There's some great new resources out there, a new conference. This last year, I went through a deal where I actually went through my podcasts, and it wasn't new resources. Yeah. I eliminated a bunch. It's like, I think they're great, but I think they're actually messing with my head. Yep. And I need to get away from some of these things, even though they were good. Yeah. Stop or start some things.
Yeah, 100%. Voice fatigue, you've heard kind of the best that they're going to say. You need to move on. You need to get
start
new
repeating
ideas.
themselves.
Kind of like DS's, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of.
Yeah. I'd love to go to a board meeting where they've invited 2 or 3 people from the congregation that are only there that one time because they want to ask them some questions. And it just changes the dynamic of the whole conversation, right? So yeah, new conversations, new people, new resources, the whole 9 yards. It energizes your teams. It focuses your priorities. It engages new leaders. It just has all kinds of
Sometimes
side
it has nothing to do with the
benefits.
church. What about personal changes?
Yeah, so that can make a big difference.
Now we're getting personal.
We are, and I actually think like you got a new trainer recently, right?
I did.
And you tell me.
The first one got fired because he was cheating.
Okay. Yeah.
Should I laugh about that? But yeah, it made a big difference for me.
Yeah.
Kylie and I both go and it's just giving me new energy.
Yeah. I get new dogs all the time. All the time.
I don't want to know what you do with the old dogs.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. No, on a serious way, you make changes in your personal life.
We are not getting a new cat.
It's
Kylie. I'm just saying.
A domino
no
effect.
No.
It's a domino effect. If you, I mean, it's just great if you can let that be in a healthy, with some healthy boundaries, but new habits, a new schedule. Part of for me, like I'm in a season creating a new season. We're going to talk at our time tonight about some new things we're doing as a district, and part of it was I needed to adjust schedule to be able to focus on. So all those things, just personal changes, can just get you going, and
a new approach to your quiet time. I tend to be, some of you know this about me, pretty cerebral.
Right.
And so I had someone challenge me this year, go the other way, very much engage your imagination, your emotion, which is very uncomfortable for me in my quiet time. I love to study, and it's just totally revolutionized that for me and given some new energy.
Yeah. And hopefully you're wise enough, seek good enough counsel to make good changes, right? Like hopefully, is eating more donuts a change? Sure. Does it have a domino effect? Absolutely, right? But hopefully, I don't
know, but sometimes it's Krispy Kreme Tuesday.
Hey,
they're half off. I'm just saying. Don't tell my trainer.
There's some life rules you got to live by. I get it, Mike. I get it. But I guess it's understanding that you don't have to pick the magic bullet and make the wise change. Be okay if people say, I can't believe she tried that. I can't believe he did that. Who cares? Just
it doesn't have
shots
to be
on goal.
Directly
right?
related.
No.
Find something.
No, absolutely.
I think pay attention to what feeds you. Know what feeds you.
Yeah.
And either do something that feeds you or do something new that might feed you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna share an example that most of us won't admit to out loud.
Okay.
But
I'm nervous now.
You'll never do this 2-district thing again, will you? Okay.
Well, you can't remember their names, so I'm just saying.
Whatever. We already threw it all out. So, but you tell me, when you get a new shirt that you really love, how much more pep is in your step as a leader that day? There's a little something. And we don't admit it. But when you come across oh man, and you put that on, you just have, it's just that.
Looking at Kylie because she could tell you, yeah.
That little bit of a change. It's like, yeah, I'm something today. Yeah.
I don't know that I've thought that, but yeah.
I'll tell you, you get a new cowboy hat sometime, and dude, it's just if it fits you right and you look good in it, it's just.
Is that a Northwest District thing? How are we doing Pacific Southwest cowboy hat? Tucson, you've got that, but
I think it's time for you to introduce Jim and for us.
Yeah.
To move the
So let me just land with this question. I think this is a great way for us to land as we go into just great teaching. I think the rest of the retreat is for you to write down, what do you personally need to change or address to feed your energy in this next season?
Yeah.